We're here with Nicole Masters, who is one of the folks who was in our film, To Which We Belong. Nicole has traveled around the world. She's originally from New Zealand, but she works primarily with ranchers and farmers here in the United States. And she was a very important voice in our film. So we're here to catch up with her. I'm Pamela Tanner Boll, the director and producer and the executive producer of To Which We Belong. And it's been a number of years since Nicole and I talked. I think it's been at least, it'll be nearly 4. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, Nicole, you've been up to so many things, but let's start with your book, which you were working on back in the day.
Yes.
Tell us a little
Yeah,
bit about the book, the love of,
yeah.
it's called the love for the love of soil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gosh, I can't believe it's been that long, Pamela. COVID really changed time frames, it feels. Yes, so the For the Love of Soil was published. I self-published it in October 2019. And I had 55 book tour events around Australia and Canada and North America, and they were all cancelled with COVID. And so and I was really grateful actually because my travel schedule was just going to be nuts. And it's been the best thing ever, I think, for me, for a book coming out when it did come out, is maybe people have had some more time to read. It's also on Audible, so people are able to listen with their busy lives if they're driving themselves. And I've just been blown away by how well the book's been received.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. It's a beautiful book. I love it.
Oh,
I just
yeah.
remember you talking about trying to get those chapters done back in the day when we
Yeah.
were interviewing you. Yeah, that was great. And then there's been another new thing. You've created a coaching company, Create Coaching. Tell us about that.
Create is the program. So Integrity Soils is my business. And pre-COVID, we were really focusing on the one-to-one coaching, or one-to-one consultancy, and working with farmers and ranchers. And I really shifted gears, and the timing was perfect again. And what we're looking at is, how do we create more impact in the world? And I'm not the one that's going to be doing that in Iowa. I'm not the one that's going to be doing that in Kenya. And it's, how do we train people in more effective communication and really actually being very interested in what other people are up to and their context, and getting in each other's world so that we can be more effective with just transforming the face of agriculture. And so Create was born. It's an agroecological coaching. It's really for people that are very serious about, I want to do this as a career. It's a very focused program. At the moment, I think, yeah, it's about 30 weeks long. And we are currently running Create in the UK. So we've had people from 14 different countries attend Create. And yeah, it's just been blowing my mind.
So tell us for the folks who may have not seen To Which We Belong, tell us a little bit about what you're teaching in this program and why.
Hmm. Yeah, so my background is in soil science more officially, but also half of my background is in organizational learning and behavior change, so social science. So I work with producers. I've been, I guess, actively consulting since 2006 and running education programs since 2003. So I work as an agroecologist, which is someone that really weaves the ecological principles and how is it that we can work within landscapes into food production. And so training people to see whole systems, training people in how to think more deeply and more complexly about ecosystems that we're working in, so that we avoid the unintended consequences that we're dealing with right now, from climate change to water quality to food quality to human health. Is we really need to be asking these bigger questions. And really, I think the biggest question that we ask as an agroecologist is, how do we fit to the world instead of trying to force the world to fit to us, which is really the industrial model and where thinking has been coming from. So it's an emergent property right now. It's a very rewarding space to be working in.
Mhm. So if you could sum up in a few sentences the difference between what you're trying to teach farmers and ranchers and even gardeners around the world compared
Mm,
to how most, I mean, a lot of people are interested in improving their lands, but they don't really
yeah,
understand the difference between what we might call an industrialized model of farming or even
yeah.
ranching compared to what you're trying to do and why this matters so much.
I think this is a key principle for the planet right now, and it applies to education, it applies to health, it applies to food systems, is the industrial model of thinking has really been around probably like 100 years of how how do we get people to operate like a widget. We get an educational system that sets people up for don't think, here's the route answer, don't be creative, we need people that are easier to control. And that was really what the behaviorists were trying to push, in the late 18th century, late 19th century. And so how this differs is we're actually training people to think again. How do we think complexly? And it's not to say that people haven't been thinking, it's that our education systems indoctrinate us in terms of looking for a single right answer instead of being okay with uncertainty and instead of being adaptable and resilient, which is what the world really requires. And I think for the last 100 odd years, it's been fine because we've actually been in an environment that is incredibly abundant. The climate's been very easy to grow in. And now we're starting to see the consequences of that. And now we need people that can really think their way through these big complex issues without becoming overwhelmed or consuming to make up for the fact that you're overwhelmed or reaching for a pill to try and solve your problems. As we're really looking at, okay, what's the root cause of many of these issues, and how do I really empower myself?
So again, to for folks who may not have seen To Which We Belong, we're hoping they want to see it after this. We're really looking at soil health as sort of the foundation or one of the fundamentals in creating a more abundant way of farming and ranching, correct?
Yeah, I think soil forms one of the foundations, and then you've got people. So that's why I said, like, I've got
Well,
this
of
this
course.
to balance of soil and technical soil science and microbiology, and then actually the human aspect of what is influencing landscape management. And I think what's interesting, and since we probably talked last, is what I'm seeing is an interest in soil, and we're very excited about that, and talk about regenerative agriculture. But we can't just narrow in on any one part. It's not just soil, and it's not just carbon, and it's not just water, and it's all of these elements intertwined. And that's where we see the real benefits for everybody on the planet.
Mhm. Give me an example of how those are all intertwined. Give me a case study in that, you've where somewhere where you've worked that's been you've had you've had your rancher or your farmers sort of the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, it's oh gosh, there's so many cases that come to mind. I think when people first start working with me, they're like, "Oh, we're going to be putting an input on the soil." And I'll be asking them, "Well, why?" And what has been happening historically on this land? What's created the situation? So, the second create that we actually ran in Nevada on Cottonwood Ranch.
Mhm.
And there's such a brilliant example of, people that done a lot of training, they were doing some great stuff with their management, but at no time had anyone dug a hole to see what was going on underground. And what was happening was their fields are basically, so their hay fields, which are the most important, I guess, backdrop of production and certainly being able to get through the harsh winters that they have in the semi-arid mountains, is they had stopped growing any forage. There was nothing pretty much growing in those fields. we say nothing, maybe like 10%. And so we come along and we dig some holes and we look at actually these soils are totally water repellent. You're just growing, weedy species that don't benefit animal health. And the water that's then coming off that is going to be less quality water. It's not going to move through the landscape in the same way. And so just stepping back from that operation and watching that snowballing effect of people becoming much more engaged with what's happening below the ground and starting to take some different actions. So they went from growing close to nothing to a crop that was literally at my shoulder height that they could now get back into production, and to see the smiles on people's faces, because in a situation like that, you're literally talking about the success of a family, the success of a business. Hopefully they don't mind me talking about that. But yeah, that actually you're able then to flip a switch and for life to come back. And what they're seeing is bird life and insect life, and more and more animals are wanting to come back onto the property.
What, you're talking a cattle operation?
Yes, yes.
Just to,
Yeah.
again, to clarify for, this is, I have a funny space here because we want people to watch this film and to hear from you, not so much as practitioners or producers who are growing, grasses for cattle and whatnot, but also for people who are interested in a bigger way about the health and the well-being of the planet, where we
Yeah.
live. So we
Yeah.
have to, I'm trying to get them to understand. So that's a great example that it looked healthy. It looked like things were growing, but they weren't really growing food that cattle could actually use. If
No.
that's
It actually didn't look healthy. They knew that things weren't working well. They'd just run out of ideas. And sometimes it just takes someone to open a doorway, and it doesn't really matter where you're at.
so.
And I think the piece that's missing, and I think this is what To Which We Belong speaks to a little bit, is it's land management that plays a huge role in what's happened with climate variability. And scientists have known this for a long time, and it was kind of pushed to the side with, and instead the agenda of, carbon and carbon offsets and greenhouse gases and fossil fuels, instead of talking about whole systems. So what is happening on land? And that's what we're seeing with some of the people into which we belong, and certainly what we've seen taking off in the last 4 years is that connection that actually land management has a huge impact in what we're seeing with temperature changes, with that land mass heating, the way the water cycle works, that all impacts on everybody. It doesn't matter if right now you're in New York or you're in Bangladesh, that we're all being impacted by the mismanagement of land.
That's a great explanation. So what I'm excited about, and I'm not a soil scientist, you know that. I'm somebody who likes to talk to people. Is what I'm really excited about is the restoration of lands that have become near deserts.
Yeah.
And so, we see this in Alan Savory's work. He's got some great videos about it, but can you give us some examples of what happens? How does a desert become a place where you can graze cattle or sheep or whatever? And why does
Yeah.
that matter?
Oh gosh. Well, it it matters, right? It matters so much. And I think we can look through history of thousands of years and see where areas have desertified because of human and grazing mismanagement. And then to see people like Alejandro, who's into which we belong, down in Mexico, to see what is the potential when we really ask the question of what does it take to restore water here, the carbon cycles, to get organic material down and not just take every single blade of grass. So we can look at it from, and I guess if we're talking larger landscapes, this often is animal management, but this doesn't have to be. We can restore ecosystems without the use of animals. It's just going to take a lot more human labor or money, perhaps, on that side of things. But we're seeing global restorations with tree planting and the use of swales to slow water down and to just catch water. And it's like humans were at the center of this degradation, and humans are at the center of its revegetation, restoration, re-life.
Mhm. So what people don't understand when I talk to them about this film or anything really that has to do with climate, they don't understand that these degraded properties can actually be returned to green and productive
Yeah.
through all those processes. And they will also often say to me, well, but there's no water in the Sahel, let's just say. And yet,
Yes.
yeah. So speak to that, the
Yeah. It's I,
restoration.
I really I really enjoy sitting down with the producer and looking at satellite imagery and going, where did water used to flow? And finding the oldest accounts that you can find of people passing through landscapes and what they would see. And I have a friend, a client who was halfway between Billings and Roundup in Montana. So if you ever drive along that road, it literally is a hellscape of blowed dirt and sagebrush and open ground, and it's super dry. But when you look on satellite imagery, and we found a cavalry account that was saying they never had to ride further than 2 miles to water their horses and cattle. And then you're in this landscape going, what? There hasn't been water here. There's no water here. And it's that human perception of our memories is so short, and we forget what vibrancy there used to be, and not necessarily people were collecting data on how vibrant these landscapes were. And so again, to look at those images, we can see there used to be meandering waterways, there used to be springs, and that's all because we've lost our soil sponge, that soil carbon, that life, those root systems, all of these things that interrelate to make an ecosystem function, has been overgrazed. And then we lose those root systems. We end up with a lot of bare ground. And now water just moves really fast over the landscape. So some people might have heard of the slow food movement. We're talking about the slow water movement.
Got it. That's great. So if I can summarize, not that it's the whole story, to me, one of the big ideas that you bring to the table with people around the world is roots in the ground year round. You
Yeah.
can always have plants in the ground, and the more variety in the plants, the more you're going to be able to feed the microbial life in the soil. And that is what actually creates the sponge that you're talking about that holds the water and also creates the health of the soil, and that creates healthy plants. Is that a fair
Yeah.
statement? You can say what you
Yeah,
want.
I think it's I think it's one of the aspects, and we're always looking at what are different people's contexts,
Mhm.
and I think part of that context, or the water that you swim in when you're working in any ecosystem. So someone working in Mexico, their context, their reality, the world around them is very different from someone working in New York in a community garden setting, or someone in Canada who's in an intensive cropping system. We're always looking for what are those points of leverage that can bring more vibrant life to that landscape. And certainly having ground cover, so maybe there's not a living root if you are in an annual production system, but then asking the question of what would it look like to have more plant material, or to have more living material, or to have more mulch, or bring in more life. What does that look like? And I think this is what I enjoy about this space, is that it's not a cookie cutter approach, that for everybody this can look different, but we're still answering that same question, which is, what does it look like to bring in more vibrant life?
Great. Well, what are you excited about in the next? Well, first of all, you're now in the United States, correct? You're
Yep.
here for
Yep.
good. Yeah,
I have my green card. I'm officially American.
I remember. So what are you excited about looking forward? What are you
Oh
most
gosh.
excited about?
Um, we are looking at building a center for regenerative integrity here in the Paradise Valley, which I think one of the things that working with brands and working with larger organizations who are right now making big decisions around what does it look to regenerate, they've often never been on an operation that really is a demonstration of what does it look like to bring more life and also to cohabitate. And that's what we have here in the Paradise Valley is so startling is you've got bears, you've got moose, you've got beaver and fish, and how do these look like to place this within a food production ecosystem and just have people come out and walk in it and feel it. I think that's the missing piece is we've forgotten how to feel.
I love that. And I love the fact that you're dealing always with complexity and that you're
Mm,
not, see, my understanding of the industrial model is that we're trying to make things simple, like you
mm,
said, a recipe or a cookie cutter,
yeah.
which doesn't make sense when you're dealing with living systems.
No.
So this approach, the regenerative approach, not only will potentially, in fact, I think it will fix our water cycle, it will fix our carbon
Mm-hmm.
issue. It will. I mean, land is a
Yeah.
huge carbon sequester. You can sequester a lot of carbon in the land
Yeah.
that's currently in the wrong place in the sky. But what you're really dealing with is complexity. And that story that you just said, where you could have a place where people see the wildlife can coexist.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cattle or sheep or what have you is it's just so amazing. And it's not a dream, it's an actual possibility.
Yes. Yeah. So we're just in the process of pulling it all together right now. I think one of the recent ahas I had was, I've heard from different people, we can sustain a human population, potentially that's twice as high as what it is right now. We're not near carrying capacity. And David Attenborough said 94% of all the biomass of living organisms on terrestrial Earth, 94% is humans and livestock.
Mm.
I'm like, wow, we are past that carrying capacity, I think, in terms of pushing everything out of these ecosystems and just having one animal type on a piece of land. And it's like, well, what does it look like to create habitat for a variety of organisms? What does it look like to bring back the birds, bring back insects, bring back the microbiology that everything else is feeding on? And yeah, have a system that does feel really chaotic and at times can be quite stressful when you are cohabitating because you need to find ways to one keep people safe, avoid predation, make sure that there's enough grass for other things that you're trying to grow. But it asks some big questions.
Mhm. But it's not a zero-sum game, is it? It's not either
No,
or.
no,
It's
it's not.
yeah. So that's what a lot of people seem to think that, well, we have to, tear down this forest over here because we need to grow more soybeans. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's more simplistic thinking, but that's what we've been employing for quite a while. So this
Mhm.
is, again, it's a exercise. What you're doing is an exercise in complexity, and we know it works.
Yeah.
Look at Alejandro Carrillo. Again, you mentioned him down in the Chihuahuan Desert in
Yeah.
Mexico. He has created a bird sanctuary in addition
Mhm.
to increasing his cattle herd size by 3.
Yeah.
And his grasses are back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And that's
he's
what people need
at
to
ranches.
see. I think you need to see something like that to really believe it's possible. Otherwise, you look at those like the Sahel maps and go, well, it's always been a desert. And, but I think 80% of semi-arid rangeland in the US is degraded. So it's like, here's a huge opportunity to alter some of the greenhouse gas calculations and certainly be drawing down, but also that impact on the short water cycle. So much of this volatility, we can look around every day and see the volatility. I mean, we're in, I think it's 60-mile-an-hour winds, and the temperature's gone from, I think we were like 50, and now we're down to 6. It's like this huge fluctuation, and it's mountain living. So I know that that's kind of normal, but everywhere, everywhere I travel, people are like, this is not normal. This isn't what, and you could say, well, this is a normal cycle. You could blame sunspots, whatever you want to do, that's fine. But what we do know is that regulating this variability comes from good land management. It comes from soils that are covered, that aren't baking in the heat and freezing in the cold, and that cycle, on and on it goes. But I think the more interested we get in it, then the more we can regulate some of this.
I love this, Nicole. I'm so glad we talked. Your coaching program, I think, will have a huge impact. You're
Mm.
training a cadre of people who understand how to deal with these issues from not a simple, as I said, recipe solution, but let's look at the whole picture. What's going
Yeah.
on in soil, what's going on with land management, what are you planting, if it's a farm, how many cattle are you running, which actually you may be running too few, or you may be running them
Yep.
in the same place. You may be keeping them in the same. There's a lot of variables, and you're teaching
Yep.
these folks how to work with farmers and ranchers around the world. So
Yeah.
congratulations. I think this is a wonderful program. And your center, I can't wait to see that. So,
Yes. Yep. I will send you an invite.
no. Please. All right. So again, we're talking with Nicole Masters, the owner and of Integrity Soils, and the also the author of the book For the Love of Soil. And tell us, and also the program Create, which, if anyone on this is listening, is really interested in having a career in this arena, you need to find out more about this program. But tell us where we can find each of those.
Under the website integritysoils.com. But also, get in touch on Facebook or Instagram. We are on those. So Integrity Soils, it shouldn't be too hard to find. Oh yeah, my name. But yeah, come and check us out. See where you might find some of these coaches. Maybe one of them lives close to you, or someone might be interested in traveling to you. We've had some of the most, I've been very fortunate with the people that have applied to Create. The graduates are just extraordinary people, up to, big work in their different parts of the world that, you may have already heard of some of these people.
Well, thank you so much. And we'll catch up another time, hopefully. And this is
Yeah, hopefully not in another 4 years.
and I'm Pamela Tanner Boll, and our film is towhich-we-belong.com. You can go there to see it. Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Pamela.